Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Echale podcast. My name is Jose Quintero, and I'm going to go ahead and do a quick introduction because you've already seen him in past episodes. You've heard him in past episode. Eddie the Hustler. What up, brother?
What's up, bro?
No, I'm so excited to have you back on here because obviously one of the topics that I love to get into, and so do you, is money. And if you're listening to this episode, you're watching this episode on YouTube, you saw the title. It literally says Masterclass Finance 101. So investing. We're going to do 4 episodes with Eddie talking about money. How do you feel about that?
I feel good, bro.
Yeah?
You know, I love talking about money, and I know you do. We both light up like a tree, in Christmas.
Yeah, so we're going to go ahead and do 4 episodes. The first one's going to be very basic, introducing you guys to money, introducing to the psychology of money. So that way, as each episode goes on, you start understanding a little bit more and you have a foundation of it. And one of the things about psychology of money is repetition. So even if you don't know enough about money, I think once you start immersing yourself in money, like you start understanding it better. How do you feel about that?
I think when it comes to money, right, it's not like you have to be a rocket scientist or anything. It's something that you can develop, you know. The good thing about the internet and social media is that you could learn about stuff, right? You could go to, website? Investopedia, start reading stuff. There's a bunch of articles, and there's a lot of people on social media that will challenge your perspective about money and teach you about it. But the more you surround yourself with it, the more expose yourself to it, the more you'll develop, the skills and start getting familiar on what to do with it, how to use it, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So the psychology of money, when we think of psychic, it's like the mindset. How do you start developing the mindset towards having money? Because we all like money. We all love money. But like my mom says, like it's hard to come by and it's so easy for it to leave. So how do we start getting into a mindset of having money stay with us? What do we have to overcome? Because I'm sure that's a lot of like inner.
Yeah. I think it's our behaviors and our internal views on it. Like for example, when I was younger, whenever I would get a paycheck, like antes, before I would get it, I would do the math and then I would look at, okay, what can I buy, right? But after a while, at least with me, I was getting frustrated, like, dang, man, I'm always living like check to check. Like I want to do this and this, but I have to, budget my money more, figure out what I'm doing wrong. Like I was always behind.
Yeah.
And from there, I kind of took initiative to start reading, exposing myself, putting myself out there where they were talking about money. Mm-hmm. And, I would ask my parents too, because they have a different perspective, right? I learned some of the mistakes that they made, talked to my friends, people that I knew like, hey, he's doing pretty good. He has his house, he has a car, things like that. And then just talking to them. But I think the biggest thing is just putting yourself out there, asking for help, taking initiative and just really trying to get involved and change the psychology, the way you see it, how you use it, how does it work?
Yeah.
And go from there.
Yeah, no. So many of us that are probably listening and viewing this on YouTube are afraid of money. We're afraid to even check our bank account. I know I was the type of person that I was afraid to check my bank account. And then not only that, every time we got a raise at a job, even though we're supposed to have more money, it still feels like we're still living paycheck to paycheck.
Yep. So I think like the fear of money, I don't think it'll, like once it starts going down and you see like, dang, I don't have that much, or it's like going low, that fear is always kind of like there even with me. I see my balances, and when I have like big purchases, like it still hurts me like, dang, it's dropping. Yeah. And that fear is never going to go away. But to combat that, one thing that I do is, I believe in myself. I believe in my skills. I'm constantly learning, reading, educating myself, to find ways to make sure I keep myself sharp, because in my opinion, money follows value, right? So the more valuable, the more knowledgeable you become, the more skills you have, eventually the money will come.
Yeah.
So you have to provide something of value. So I'm constantly learning, developing my skills. And, the more you learn, the more you'll earn. Mm-hmm. But yeah, going back to the fear, I mean, it's never going to go away, but you have to constantly be developing yourself. That way you believe in yourself. Like, oh, okay, I have the skills. I know I could go out and, you know, make money. I know my skills in my workplace. I'm very knowledgeable, and
Yeah. So many people say you have to face fear like head on. And
Yeah.
I firmly believe that as well, because when I started like getting into my finances and getting into like my bank account, like sometimes seeing it, shit, I have an overdraft
Yeah,
fee.
bro.
Like, oh shit, I spent too much money. Like once you start seeing your bank account, you start realizing how much you're spending on stupid stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not stupid stuff because at the moment you got gratification from a bag of
Yeah.
hot Cheetos, from a Starbucks. But then you start realizing all these patterns are like, hold up, I'm buying a bag of hot Cheetos every single day at $1.89 or whatnot. Or shit, I'm buying a Starbucks coffee
Yep.
every single day for $5. That's $30. And even though those are like everybody's trying to like look for a cheat code, like maybe I should
Yeah.
start buying less coffee, when you're supposed to start understanding what you're spending on, right?
Yeah, I agree. That's a good point. Yeah, I think once you understand like where your money is going, it makes it a lot easier, right? Because I think the first step when it comes to, you know, getting your money in check is to understand where every dollar is going.
Yeah.
You know, and then one thing, how I view my money, and just going back to like the psychology and the perspective, is I treat every dollar as like an employee, right? So I want to give it a job. I want to have it do something for me in order for it to grow, you know, recruit more employees and things like that. So like little mindsets like that kind of switch your perspective, like, oh shoot, what the heck, right?
Okay.
Because a lot of it's just spending, like, oh, I want Netflix, I want this, I want that. But once you start switching, like, okay, how can I make this dollar grow, right? How can I double it? How
Okay,
can
well
I-
then take me through, like, all right, you get your paycheck. Let's say your
Yeah.
paycheck is $1,000. How does your mind work?
my mind, when I get $1,000, right? First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pay myself first, right?
Okay.
So I'll put something to the side.
What does paying yourself mean, though?
Paying yourself means the money that you made, you're taking a portion of it, whatever, you know, $10, $20, whatever you feel comfortable with, and putting it to the side. You can either save it, invest it, or just hold on to it, you know? But that's me paying myself, because if I don't, then that money's gonna get spent, right? Because when we see it in our bank account, a lot of times it's like, okay, this is how much I have, and we already start doing the math. Okay, I could buy this. Oh, I got this bill coming up, right? We're not thinking anymore about putting it away. So that's the first thing I do to make sure that I'm able to invest or save it. That way I have money on the side.
Okay.
But that's the first thing that I do, is pay myself first before anything.
And then after that, so you pay yourself first, then whatever's left over, is that your play money? Is that what you use to your fixed expenses?
Yeah, pretty much. So that portion, the remaining balance, I pretty much use it for bills or like anything extra that I would want for myself a little bit. But I kind of delay a lot of like the gratification of buying certain things, like, oh, I want this Jordan, or I want, you know, a new watch, a new hat.
Yeah.
A lot of it I kind of push it off a little bit, because until I have like a certain amount saved or invested, right? So before I buy anything, I like to have, you know, either that same amount saved up or invested, just to make sure, you know, I have like a cushion just in case if anything goes wrong. But that's how I treat it.
Is there a certain, like, for going back to the $1,000 example, is there a certain percentage of the $1,000 that you save?
Yeah.
Or like out of $100, if we're making it simpler? Or is it like, what's the number? Everybody's, I feel like, looking for a number. How much of my check should I be saving?
That one is, it's hard because it's again, it's personal finance. So it's based on what you feel comfortable. Like I might be able to do 500. Someone is like, oh, 500, I can only do like 5 right now. Like I'm not comfortable saving that much, or I only want to do $10. So it's whatever you're comfortable with. A good rule of thumb that I like to tell people is like 10%. So out of that $100, 10% is $10. Just put it to the side, right? Just put it to the side, put it in a savings account or invest it. And the good thing about when you put it to the side, don't put it in your regular bank account that you use for spending, because if you see it, you're gonna spend it, you know. So it's good to have like a different bank account, porque si no, it's like, oh shoot, let me pull into that.
Yeah, and that's again going back to the psychology of money.
Yep.
The psychology of money is you see it, but you have to work your mindset differently.
Yeah.
And one thing that I noticed, because I do have separate bank accounts, right? So I have my main one, which is Wells Fargo, and then I have like Charles Schwab, and I also have Chase, just because I'm like crazy like that. You just don't want to have your money in one bank account. That's just me personally. And what I do is I automate things. So many people are like, okay, but do I have to do this every time I get paid? Well, if you set up automation, you don't have to worry about it. Like it's sort of like you said, giving your money a job. Well, you can give your bank account a job too. I literally have like, hey, every week transfer $50 into my savings or my other bank account. And then little by little, like I see my main bank account and I'm like, all right, well, that's what I got left over. And I already forgot months later about my Charles Schwab or my Chase bank account. You're just like, oh shit, I have more money.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. And it's like, there's like the cliche says, out of sight, out of mind, right?
Exactly.
If you don't see it, you're not going to touch it. Because when we see that money, when you know you have money, everything becomes an emergency. It's like, dang, you know, I'm hungry, but I ain't got the money right now. Oh, let me just pull it from my savings. I'll put it back later. And we all know it's not going to happen.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So little things like that, again, just your perspective on how you treat it and how you use it goes a long way. And it all comes down to habits. So it's not like rocket scientists or like, dang, this guy's a genius or like, what the heck? It's just the habits. The little things will go a long way, and it'll build up over time.
So this is a master class, meaning we're gonna go over things pretty fast and obviously a general overview. But as the episodes go by, we'll probably get into like deeper topics, like talking about credit cards, talking about investing, talking about so many other things. But definitely, Eddie is somebody that you should follow on social media and check out his work. One thing I now want to go ahead and talk about is these terms that we constantly listen or constantly hear, because we hear assets, we hear liabilities, right? So what would you say is an asset?
So in simplest terms, an asset is anything that puts money into your pocket, right? And that's what we want to strive to get, right, with our money, right? We want to put it into assets. So I think a great example is going to be like a house, right? You buy a house, the value of it goes up, that's an asset. Eventually, if you rent it out, things like that, money in your pocket, over time, the value of the house is going to go up. Again, equity, I mean, well, that's another term, right? But the value of the house is going up, asset.
Okay, what is a liability?
A liability is the opposite. So anything that takes money out of your pocket, right? I think a good example is like credit card debt, sometimes a car loan, right? Money out of your pocket, it's leaving you. So we want to use our money to buy assets and limit our liabilities.
So question, for example, you said right now like a car is a liability. Once you pay it off, does it become an asset?
Well, I think from my perspective, it depends on how you use it, but it kind of still is a liability because, you know, you have the maintenance, the upkeeping, all that other stuff, right? So it's still technically money out of your pocket. But like the way it would be considered an asset would be like if you have your own business or side hustle, right? Because now you're using that to get you around, to generate revenue and things like that. But that's another discussion.
Yeah. All right. So another term that a lot of people don't understand is appreciation versus depreciation or depreciation. I don't know.
Depreciation.
Okay, I said it right.
Appreciation, that's when the value of hopefully that asset goes up in price, right? So, for example, a stock, you buy it at $5, it goes up to $10. That's appreciation, right? The proper term is capital appreciation, right? So the money's going up. Depreciation is the value of something goes down. A good example is like a car, right? You buy a car, let's say it's $50,000 in like 5 years, you drove it and everything, the value of it's 25 or whatever.
And then so many people don't realize like they drive the car off the lot and it's already depreciated in value just because you took it out of the car lot. And you're just like, but why? Well, ya está usado.
Yeah, exactly.
Ya lo chupó el diablo. You're right?
Yeah. So But yeah, a lot of these terms are good for people to understand, especially when you're getting your money in check, because it helps when you have an understanding, because they're kind of like guides, right? And I know I said equity earlier. For those that may not know, equity is basically ownership, right? When you own something, like a house, they might say equity, or with stocks, they say equity. That's basically ownership, like you own it.
Okay. Dang, okay. Is there something that you recommend people do to get into the mindset of money? Like, obviously, we talked about automation. We talked
Yeah.
about, like, putting some stuff to the side. But is there something that, like, as an individual versus somebody who already has a family? Because I think those are two different conversations at times.
Yeah, I think it is. As an individual, in order to get, well, for anybody, I see money as like oxygen, right? It's not like the end all be all, but we want to make sure we have enough. That way we can, breathe comfortably, just like oxygen, right? You don't want like a whole bunch, but you want to be enough to take a deep breath, right? So that's how I see money. As an individual, right? I mean, you would want to be able to take care of yourself, buy things, enjoy things in life, but a lot of it comes back to you, right? You have to look internally, look at yourself, put yourself out there, learn about it, expose yourself, right? The more you can expose yourself to different perspectives and about money, eventually, it'll be ingrained in you. And I think it's a little bit different if you have a family and stuff, because now your purpose, or I think like one of your biggest goals is like, hey, I want to provide for them. If you have kids, like, oh, I want my kids to be successful. So everything that you learn, you're going to instill it into them, and they're going to build on that, right? So boom, it just starts building and building.
Yeah, so that's very important that you touched on the kids, because generational wealth is another term that is used a lot, and you're just like, it's super, I guess it's easy to decipher what it means, generational wealth.
Yeah.
So it's like, you're passing down the wealth to a new generation.
Yep.
We didn't have generational wealth, I mean, if you're listening and you did, great.
Yeah.
Most people don't have generational wealth, and generational wealth can be gone in a generation as well.
Yep, it could go by quick.
Yeah, it could go by quick because people don't understand or have a really good relationship with money. So that is the end goal, I think, for a lot of people. Be financially stable, financially comfortable, have a good relationship with money, and be able to pass that knowledge down to our offsprings.
Yep.
And yeah, so thoughts on generational wealth?
Yeah, I think that's huge, right? To understand money and share the knowledge, right? Which is one thing that I do. A veces like the homies are like, "Oh, you're an influencer." I'm like, "Nah, bro. Like, if anything, I feel like a big brother, right? I just want to share whatever I know, because if I could teach one person or show them something, obviously they're gonna share it to someone else, and it just starts multiplying, right? And there's a reason in school it's not really taught, right? It's different. It's not, if everyone learned about money and how to do it, I mean, who knows how the world would be. But, when you talk about finance and everything and generational wealth, a lot of that stuff, you have to learn it outside of school. And, it starts with the kids. You teach them whatever you know, and they build on it. And then that's how you're able to, basically start your own bank. The more you know about certain things, the more you could pass it on, and the more impact you could have on other people. Like my little brother, right? When he was younger, probably like 13, I started teaching him about credit cards, right? And how to use it, on the statements, how to read it, things like that. Little things like that will go a long way. And again, in school, a lot of that stuff isn't taught. So it starts with us, passing all that information on.
So you mentioned something that you feel like a big brother on social media, just sharing your knowledge, to the people who follow you. And I think that's very important, because every time we're trying to share knowledge, just like this podcast, because at the end of the day, quiero que le eches ganas a la vida, quiero que salgas adelante. We're not financial advisors and whatnot. And so many people will go to a financial advisor to tell them, and I'm sure they've told you, like, hey, here's $100. Can I just give them to you, and can you just do it for me?
Yeah, that's happened to me a lot. People always tell me, like, hey, bro, can I just give you money and you, like, do it for me or whatever? But I'm not a financial advisor, right? I'm just simply sharing my knowledge, and I try to show, like, okay, this is how I would think this is what you could do. And the reason why I don't want to take anyone's money and like, oh yeah, this is how, let me do it for you, whatever, is one, it's your money. No one's gonna care about your money more than you, right? So if you give it to someone else, it's a different story, right? So they don't have much on the line because it's you. Yeah, you'll probably get pissed at them or whatever, but it's like at the end of the day, you gave it to them. So I don't want to take that responsibility. And two, I'd rather show you. Again, like how I was saying earlier, if I could show you, obviously you're gonna pass that to someone else, right? They're gonna know it, and then that's how we start spreading the knowledge. You might instill that into your kids and go from there. But I don't think, you know, to have a financial advisor también, I personally don't believe in them.
I agree.
Right? So I don't think it's worth it. Again, there's a lot of people online, internet. You could learn a lot about finances.
Yeah.
You could ask people. You know, people ask me all the time, and I help them out. Like, hey, I'm thinking about this. What's your opinion on it? I know you've asked me about some investments. Like, hey, what's your perspective on this, right? And
I think as a society, we just need validation at times.
Yeah.
I think it's the instant gratification to make sure that we're in the right path. And I'm glad you mentioned that because, look, I'm 31, you're 25?
27.
27,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
wow.
Do I look 25?
Oh, yeah, 25.
I'll take it.
But still, bro, like you're younger than me. And I think it just goes to show that you can learn from anybody regardless of age. I was actually having a conversation yesterday. I went to a concert and then on the way back, it was like an 80-year-old man who was still doing Uber and Lyft and whatnot. And I was just like, fuck, I love learning about people, right? And the psychology, again, behind their reasoning as to why they're working or whatnot. Y soy mitotero, o chismoso. So, but he was talking to me about investments so I was super intrigued because he said he's lived in Rancho Cucamonga since the 70s. And I was like, oh, did you buy a house and whatnot? Yeah. He's like, well, I bought a condo, then I sold it, bought a house for $200 in the 80s. And in my head, I'm like, dude, like you probably already paid that house off. It's been 50 years, right? Right, since the 80s. Yeah. Well, almost 50 years, 40-something years. And usually a mortgage term is 30 years, right? Okay, I was like 30 years. So he's like, no, I still got about 15 years to pay because we've refinanced so much. But then he started talking about his investments, and I was talking to him about my investment strategies, and he's all like, oh, I'm gonna have to check that out. Thank you. And that was like, dude, no importa la edad, as long as you have a passion towards talking about money, and as long as you keep surrounding yourself with these conversations. I learned a lot from him. Yeah. He might have or might have not learned something from me, but just having that moment of conversation.
Yeah, that's beautiful, bro.
That was so dope. And resources, having those resources. I know you love reading, and I envy you so much for that because I try to read, but I feel like you're constantly reading books. Yeah. And sometimes you share books, and I don't even tell you that I go and like I buy the audio version.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'll listen to them, and then I'm like, all right, but I wish I had like a book club to talk about this.
Bro, just speaking on that, I wish I had that también too. Yeah. Hey, maybe that'll branch out to something else. But
maybe. What are some like book recommendations?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of books, right? I think when it comes to money, ones that helped me on my journey, one is the Psychology of Money. I can't remember the author. I think it's like Michael Holmes or House, something. I don't know, but it's called Psychology of Money. Another one is going to be I Will Teach You to Be Rich. That one's by
Ramit.
Yeah. You read that one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that one's really good.
Yeah. I Will Teach You to Be Rich. He also has a Netflix show.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, Rami. Yeah, it is Rami. Yeah.
Yeah, it is him. Rami, something with the S. But those two books definitely helped me. A third one, I would say is going to be Rich Dad, Poor Dad. A lot of people have read that one. That one's a good one.
Robert Kawasaki or something like that.
Kiyosaki.
Kiyosaki, there you go.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think
how do you feel about oh my God, Dave Ramsey?
I actually read one of his books. I think when it comes to getting people out of debt, he's really good at that. But everything else, I mean, in my perspective, I was like, I don't listen to him.
Okay, like
I read
what?
one of his books.
Because I think I read one of his, The Total Money Makeover. And this one, I haven't read that one. That was like one of his biggest iconic one. And what I can't remember
what are like some of the takeaways?
Well,
or anything?
exactly. Like I said, I can't really remember, but the biggest takeaway that I feel so many people have taken from him
Yeah.
is the snowball and avalanche.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's the one who invented it, but I know everybody references, Dave Ramsey's snowball
Yeah.
versus avalanche. Snowball is basically you tackle your debt with the lowest amount.
Yeah.
So like say you have three credit cards. One is 10,000, one is 3,000, and one is 5,000.
Yep.
Psychologically, you're
Yep.
gonna tackle the one with $3,000
Yeah.
just to get rid of three credit card debts or whatever.
Yeah.
Versus the avalanche, you tackle the one with the highest interest because in the long run,
Yeah.
it's going to be
It's more
charging
money
you
out of
more.
your pocket.
Yeah. So it's the snowball versus the avalanche. Maybe the 10, the 5, and the 3 out of those three credit cards, the $5,000 credit card has a 7% interest rate
Yeah.
versus the 10 and the 3 is a 2 and a
Yeah.
4. You know, psychologically, you're probably gonna be doing better paying off the one with the higher interest rate.
Yeah, and that's why I said, like, when it comes to paying off debt, like that perspective, like the mindset of that, like, oh yeah, let's tackle the lowest one, because once you see something gone, it's like, oh, you feel good, like, yeah, I don't owe money on this one. So I think that's like a really good point that he has as far as like paying off debt. But I think I haven't listened to him too much, but I think like when it comes to investing and stuff, or like a house, he's like pay it off in cash and things like that. So I think it's debatable, but again, it's personal finance, right? It's whatever works for you. That's what I always tell people. Like, you could take my information, whatever I give, but take it with a grain of salt, do your research.
Because
see
it's
how
working
gonna
for
apply.
you.
Yeah, exactly. It might work for someone else. It might not. Like, I might talk about doing it this way, and then you're like, I don't know. Right.
And again, you said it's personal finance, so it changes. For example, going back to the Dave Ramsey, at the beginning, I had 5 student loans.
Yeah.
Right. I had 5 different. They're all from the same loan provider, but one, and I will be honest, it was $80,000.
Yeah.
It was $80,000, and I still have 50, FYI. So if y'all want to help me out, pay it. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So psychologically, I was like, oh shit, like I need to pay these quick. So I had a 3,000, 5,000, and then 24,000, right?
Yeah.
And I paid down a 3,000, I paid down a 10,000 one, and I was like, oh yeah. And now I have a 5,000 and 24,000
Yeah.
left. But I noticed that the one with 24,000s, they both started at 20K, but their interest rates are like at 6% versus my $5,000 one is at 2.
Yeah.
And you're just like, what the hell am I doing? Like, I could pay off the 5,000 one quicker, yes.
Yeah.
But I know in the long run, that bigger balance with the bigger interest rate,
Yeah,
it
that
can
was
catch,
gonna kill you.
it's going to kill me. It's going to catch up to that 5.
Yeah.
So, like, real
well.
quick. So, yeah.
During that time period, were you saving también, or you're just paying everything off? Like, you're just focusing on reducing?
I was definitely attacking, and I wasn't really saving. I did have a cushion.
Yeah.
I had again, there you go, another Dave Ramsey, save
Yeah.
$1,000.
Yeah.
So that's very much, but I think everybody says that. But I had
Yeah.
a $1,000 cushion
Mm-hmm.
just in case for emergency. And what I consider emergency is if I need a tire change,
Yeah.
or a medical expense or something unforeseeable. And once that was taken care of, I went and I started just anything that I had
Yeah.
straight to my student loans. Now I have a car payment. Yay. Why?
Yeah.
Why? But I did it. I have a car payment. Student loans are now back on.
Yeah. I heard about that.
I know. So there's that. And then now I'm trying to build my and I don't know, maybe that's just a conversation just to have. Like, my emergency fund is not 1,000 anymore. Now I want to have 3 to 5 months or 3
Yeah.
to 6 months of
expenses. Yeah.
saved up.
And that's good too. It's always good to have like money put away, because you never know, right? Let's say something happens at your job, they shut down or whatever. It's always good to have extra money put away. It just gives you that comfort, and you start thinking a little bit better, right? Because you're like, oh, I have money put away, so you're a little bit más calmado, right? Rather than like, dang, I'm living check to check. So your lifestyle is going to be different. The way you carry yourself, the way you move is going to be a lot different when you're like, dang, I need to make sure, I'm
So
good.
You mentioned 3 books, and I definitely want to mention 2 other books that I really like. And I think because we mentioned 1, males, and then 2, they were mainly white or
Yeah,
not people
that's
of
true.
color, you know, and we also want to help our raza out. So if you guys have the opportunity to check out Wealth Warrior by Linda Garcia, available literally on Amazon everywhere, that is a really good book to get you started. She is a woman Latina who literally has it really reminds me of Rich Dad Poor Dad, the way
Yeah.
she talks about her life and her relationship with money and how
Yeah.
she's learned about money. And then the other one is about a girl that I follow. Her name is Millennial in Debt. She was a teacher and then started learning about money, and then she has a book, This Is Why I'm Broke. It's also
Yeah.
on Amazon, and I freaking
Yeah?
love it because Linda's is amazing. It's Rich Dad Poor Dad style.
Yeah.
Hers isn't Rich Dad Poor Dad style. It's very much stocks, like, and it has it in bold.
Like
And then-
sections?
yeah,
Boom, boom.
sections, and you're
Okay.
just like, oh, you can read this book like
Like you could jump around,
yeah,
kind of?
like
Oh,
an
yeah, that's good.
encyclopedia almost. So again, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I will teach you to be broke. I will teach you.
I'll teach you to be broke.
This is
Oh,
why
no,
I'm
don't
broke.
read that one.
Not
Don't read that one.
This is why I'm broke. Wealth Warrior, Psychology of Money.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned another one.
There was another one, Think and Grow Rich. I
Think
think
and
that
Grow
one's just
Rich.
more like mindset, right? Manifesting, things like that. But Linda's, I do have her book. I haven't started it yet. I got 2 copies, one for me and one for my lady. So we're both going to read those together. And then I'll probably check out the other one too.
Yes,
So-
definitely do it. All right, you guys. Well, hope you guys like this short episode of money. Obviously, it's a masterclass of money where we're just gonna touch an overview on money. This was Psychology of Money. We're gonna talk about investing, stocks, margin. I feel like that's something people don't really talk about. We're gonna talk about 529 plans, where if you have a business, how you can help yourself with taxes. But these are all gonna be in future episodes. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you share. Where can people follow you, Eddie?
Yeah, you can find me on all social media platforms at Eddie the Hustler.
Eddie the Hustler. Check out the other videos that we have here on this channel or on this podcast. This has been Echale Podcast.
Sheesh.